Hello, my name is Jacob Fry. Today I'll be doing the final practical crime scene collection. The scenario is that I am responding to a call about a suspected suicide. With suicide cases, the first thing we want to do is determine that it was an actual suicide and not a homicide or an accidental death. And the various methods of evidence collection can help determine that. So the first question I want to ask myself is, what was the cause of death? The cause of death, whether it is by a firearm, hanging, strangulation, suffocation, whatever it may be. So the deceased was the call was reported by the mother, and she testified that she hasn't touched the crime scene, that she had only seen her son hanging, so that we know that the victim is hanging. There is no signs of life. Therefore, we won't be cutting down the deceased at the moment to preserve the knot methods and the type of rope and all that. We also want to look for defensive wounds on the victim. Defensive wounds can determine that it may not have been a suicide and that the victim was hung post-mortem or by force. So we're something that's fairly common with many suicides is notes. We're going to be looking for notes of any sort that may have characteristics, and typically the notes are taken by the medical examiner versus the police departments. A handwriting expert will examine the note. So I will need my evidence collection bag, my chain of custody paperwork, and the incident report, the case report that I will be filling out step by step. So we're at the crime scene, and we notice first thing that there is two sets of footprints, one being the mother and the other being the suspected victim. So we're going to want to step back from the crime scene first and photograph the outside. So we'll be photographing various angles of the crime scene, the footprints as well, the point of entry, and any other signs of disturbance from its natural habitat. So once I have the outside of the crime scene photographed, and it is secured by first responding officers, I'm going to look at the point of entry. So the point of entry obviously is a locking mechanism. We're going to want to dust these for fingerprints to see if there was any other persons at the crime. So we'll be dusting these, pulling Latin prints if there's any, to match that up with the victim and possibly the mother that came to the scene. So once this is done, we have our hanging victim. We immediately notice the ladder, the rope that goes up to hang the victim, and over here we identify a note. So important parts of a suicide is to look at the ground below the victim to determine if there was any blood, vomit, any type of bodily fluids, which there seems to be none. We'll examine the victim for defensive wounds, and we're going to collect the suicide note for fingerprints and the handwriting technique. But also, we notice the string the rope that hung the victim. These ends can be matched up to the cut end to determine that the rope was left here at the crime scene, that it matches the type of rope, and the scissors that cut the rope. So fingerprints will need to be taken from the cutting device. So I need to put on my gloves. And a suicide note should be put into a document protector. So I have my note. This will be reviewed for prints and the handwriting technique. The rope will need to be put into a sealed baggie for further analysis on to match it up to the rope that was used to hang the victim. This will need to be tagged, documented into my chain of custody paperwork, its location, also the length of it, and the officer and badge number that collected the specimen. And then finally, we will be testing the cutting device for prints. Now the cutting device serves the purpose that if it is determined that the victim used the cutting device, that the victim did hang themselves. So we're just going to look for visible prints using fingerprint powder and lifting tape, and we will collect the cutting device. The victim shows no signs of defensive wounds. The hanging marks around the victim's throat will be analyzed by the medical examiner, and the noose and the rope will all be analyzed. Now the ladder also serves a purpose, because this is how the potential suicide victim elevated themselves. As you can see, it's kicked over. It appears that what most suicide victims do is kick their elevation device away. Fingerprints will need to be taken, typically on the side rails of the ladder, for prints, to determine that the victim elevated themselves voluntarily. So we'll search for prints on the ladder, and that is it. All of the crime scene has been photoed. The outside has been photoed. The chain of custody paperwork, step by step, is documenting every step that's been made. The cutting device, the rope, both have been entered and tagged into evidence collection. And as soon as the victim is taken down, the rope as well, or the noose, will be added into evidence collection. Thank you.